Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Podcast on D Shot. Finally got this one squared away again. Former Whitewater head coach Lance Leipold, now the head coach at Kansas. Lance, how's things going, and how's kind of the off season going?
Well, it's good to be with you, D-Shot. Things are going well. We're busier than ever as we keep kind of go through our stadium, our new stadium construction. Guys are out recruiting. Players have wrapped up the semester, and we're getting ready for summer conditioning as we go. But things are going well.
Okay. Yeah, things are going well here. I mean, we got our conference track meets coming up for the NEC and the FEA. Obviously, softball and baseball stuff is getting kind of into the stretch run as well. So good time to be in the kind of the Fox Valley, I guess.
Yeah, it's
Um,
got to be good busy time there with all the good athletes there and all the good coverage of all the area teams.
okay, I'll get into one of those as we kind of get through this. Lance, I wanted to ask you the kind of a question I never really asked you before. When did you know that you wanted to be a coach?
You know, it was probably I always knew I loved sports and growing up around it. My dad was a high school basketball coach, athletic director. Probably shortly after I graduated, I started working football camps there under Coach Brezowitz. And I've kind of told the story one night. I was heading back to the dorms, and um, a coach that was helping run the camp told me that he had gotten a lot of compliments about the job I was doing, and I kind of went to bed that night and started thinking more about making it a career. If I was really enjoying it, and if I was, people thought I was doing a decent job, and maybe something I wanted to pursue.
Okay. Lance, you played under Forrest Perkins and Bob Brezowitz at Whitewater. You were GA under Barry Alvarez at Wisconsin on a staff that had Brad Childress and Bill Callahan. You coached with Frank Solich in Nebraska. Obviously, you said that your dad was an AD and coach in Jefferson. Who have been kind of the biggest coaching mentors in your life, and what did you kind of take for those from those people?
Yeah, I think all those people at different times, at different opportunities and stops and situations have impacted how I've done things. Coach Perkins was was there at the beginning and towards the end of his career, but watching how he did things. Coach Brezowitz obviously was. I knew I've known Bob since I was about 15 years old. Very impactful in my life in a lot of different ways. Um, my time at Wisconsin was special, and being able to absorb and really watch a program being built and doing those things. So, I mean, I just think there are some things through the days of a Barry Alvarez. You mentioned Brad Childress and Bill Callahan. There's parts there that I took. I worked 10 years in Omaha on two different stints under a man named Pat Burns, who obviously, when you work for someone that long, you naturally take some of those things. Jim Huber was an assistant coach at Wisconsin who really kind of took me under his wing in some different things and through advice and mentorship that I also have a lot to go through. Roger Hughes, I worked with at Whitewater, but also he was a head coach at Princeton and Stetson, and became a great friend and mentor, and really urged me to take to kind of leave the nest of Whitewater and explore other things so I could learn and grow. So a lot of different people along the way have touched me in my career.
What were Perkins and Brezowitz's college coaches?
Well, Perk was probably more at the stage where he had hired Coach Brezowitz to take over the offense. Mark Peterson was the defensive coordinator. He was probably more in that CEO type role that you see more and more of. Bob was very in the early part of transitioning to a head coach. You could see the growth and things change. He had a lot of ideas and thoughts on how he'd put his stamp on it after taking over for Perk. Perk was again so good at the instilling the tradition of Warhawk football, what it was like, what he was doing. That stadium there, that's part of your backdrop, I think, is there on the right now. When you look at how far his stadium plans for the early 70s and what where he wanted Whitewater football to be was so far ahead of the pack. I think Coach Bresowitz was ahead of the in his thought process as well. And and Bob was so integral in getting some of the facilities up to date and built there. I thought was so much. Coach Bresowitz was always known in the state of Wisconsin as a developer of quarterbacks, an offensive mind, and I think he continued to do that throughout his career.
Um, I want to go into kind of tie kind of softball into this because they have a pitcher named Carly Meredith. They call her Squirrels. She's thrown so many no hitters. I've lost count. But Tim Rarick, their head coach, who obviously he didn't know Brenda Volk until I had to introduce him. But he talked about one time in a press thing with me about kind of the extra like hitting and pitching that she does after games and after practices to kind of put more time in. It kind of ties into Whitewater and kind of how your programs have been run with that 1% better mentality, because obviously I didn't really know about that until your press conference at Buffalo and Kevin's press conference at Whitewater. Where did that 1% mentality come for you, and where did that always start at Whitewater? Or
Yeah, I think it's kind of putting to a maybe a name or a tag into something that really is kind of became natural. Is how are you going to keep getting better and better? People talk about what we're able to do at Whitewater, how we're able to maintain it for as long as we did, and it's challenging. And but when people start asking, what did you do? I think at its core, we challenged our players to get a little bit better at something today that they weren't yesterday, and that's kind of the 1% better. And if your players can do that across the board, your team's going to continue to get better. I think we also were able to establish a culture that we weren't going to be satisfied in that, and in the WIAC, we had roster limits. So within the roster limit, it created the internal competition to compete daily, to get better, to sustain and hold your spot. That allowed us again to build upon that 1% better. That allowed our team to flourish and not be satisfied where we're at with the past success.
um, talk about kind of obviously Kimberly has Steve Jones and kind of the leadership stuff that he does. Pat Miller's kind of got onto that realm of things recently. I don't know if you've ever heard the name Jeff Jansen, who's kind of affiliated with Little Shoot, has some sort of connection to North Carolina. It has a book out that Little Shoot uses for their leadership academy. How have you kind of tried to use those type of leadership people to kind of build your team?
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on today with leadership principles, culture building. As you can see, culture gets to be, Matt Gildersleeve, our strength and conditioning coach here, does a great job of instilling our cultural blueprint in the off season with our players. Steve Jones has come out and talked to our players and our coaches. He does an outstanding job. A very humble man who had an outstanding coaching career at Kimberly. I know he's involved a lot with the Packers right now there. He does a great job of doing things. We've tried to do it. And again, when you're doing things in leadership and culture, it's not just throwing a bunch of words up on a wall on a graphic. It's really about action and what you're doing. And again, what we try to do is instill leadership opportunities, building not just with captains. It's with everyone about doing different things and taking ownership of things and accountability of what we're doing and kind of giving people the platform to do it. But all those people that you had mentioned there, I've heard of and are many times resources that can be used in our program.
Have you used Pat yet, or?
No, I haven't used Pat yet, but Pat, I always say Pat's not afraid to let me know, just like at Whitewater, to give me any unsolicited advice. He's always pretty good at that, so it's good. No, Pat has a good idea on on vision and team, and extremely smart, successful coach. I keep telling him he stepped away too soon, but again, I think if he's getting involved in that realm, his experiences will let him be very successful.
Yeah, I told him he should write a book like Steve has, but then told me that he's not that smart.
I don't know. Pat's a very smart man and sells himself short there. I don't know if he'd talk more about his basketball experiences or his golf game, but both have been very good. So
All right. Last time, Lance, I had you asked you about memorable games from your Whitewater days as a head coach. Now I'm going to shift to Buffalo. What were the most memorable games that you had from that stint, and what was it like to coach in a 7 overtime game?
well, the 7 overtime game was interesting because even though we came up short, I think some of the things that came to light in that is that they don't take TV timeouts or breaks in the overtime, which to me was not very much into player safety. We had opportunities to win that game. That was right after Western Michigan had gone to the Cotton Bowl the year before, and though the rules have changed now, where you have to go for two sooner and do those things, I felt it was important for us in that game to show we could go toe to toe and try to battle it out as long as we could with what was then looked at as the one of, if not the premier, the top program in our conference, as we were trying to instill confidence. We had some opportunities. We battled hard in that game and played well. I believe most of that was done with our backup quarterback in that game, who ended up being a fine player. That was very a memorable game in that regard. High scoring, lot of different things. Of Western Michigan scored, and a sister of the tight end ran out on the field thinking the game was over to congratulate her brother, and I wanted a flag for somebody being out on the field, and then they told me that the penalty would be on us since we were the home team, that we didn't have the right crowd control. I found that to be a very unique thing. I was going to start having us storm the field all the time on away games so we could get free 15-yard penalties. But that was memorable. I think in the 2018 season, we played really well. Probably one that sticks out is when we went and played a Rutgers team, a Power 5 team, a Big Ten school, and really played well and kind of took it to them. We were up by like 4 scores at halftime. Really kind of was a statement game for us. Unfortunately, in my mindset, sometimes just like at Whitewater, I remember some of the more disappointing ones than the memorable ones. It's probably a character flaw of mine, but our first bowl win in the Bahamas Bowl against a Charlotte team, was a big win. We beat Marshall in the 2020 season, and Camellia Bowl on Christmas Day. That was a big win. I thought a lot of our games in the 20 season, where it was a shortened season with COVID, but we finished 25th in the country in the final AP poll and coaches poll, which I thought was a huge accomplishment for a MAC school. Those are some of the more probably memorable things that we've gone through. Kind of rattling here, but beating Toledo at Toledo was a big game, and having success against some of those people. We beat Temple twice, an American school. Those were some big wins for our program at times when we needed them.
A lot of your former players, whether it's been Whitewater or any other stop, have gone into the coaching profession. Brady Grierbold is an assistant at Eau Claire, Brent Allen at Platteville. Jace is the head coach now at Whitewater. High school, you had Ben Farley, Aaron Roosh, Steve Morris is now the head coach of those dreaded Rebels in Kenosha. How proud are you of those guys? How much do you try to mentor those guys in their careers?
Yeah, obviously we hope that things that we've done, it's great to hear that these guys have gone on and found their passion in coaching and making impacts on young men and really loving the game. I think when you go back to UW-Whitewater and a minor in coaching and doing things, and I know they do things in leadership now and things like that, it's a great thing that it prepares young men through through the opportunity, whether it be if they're education majors, coaching minors, to make these type of impacts. The ones that have gone on to college, it's been really fulfilling to see a guy like Marcus McGlynn is a guy who's climbing the ladders and has got a bright future. To see these guys kind of go through it, and you kind of remember them and some of the things that, as coaches or as when they were playing, and now you see them coaching go through it. The neat thing is when they start saying or doing things that we used to talk about, and a lot of times the things that you're kind of proud of is that they take some of the organizational structure and make it part of what they do on a daily basis. And I think that's something we've always taken pride at along the way is our practice models, our daily organization of how we do things, because sometimes when guys have gone to places where it's not quite the same, they see the difference and they see the benefits of what the daily expectations have been and how it can be beneficial to young men.
How proud are you of Jace for now being the head coach at Whitewater? And then what are your thoughts so far in his tenure, despite last year's 6-4 season?
I'm first of all, I'm very happy of Jace. It's great to see him grow and watch him do it. It's not surprising to me. When Jace was first coaching at Whitewater, coaching our linebackers and doing things, I one time told him that there was a time in my coaching career where I had looked at where Bob Brezowitz was at when he got the job at Whitewater and how old I would be and how old Bob would be when he was getting closer to retirement, and that it could time up that if professional development wise, I would probably be in a position there where I could apply for that job. I told Jace one time in a conversation, I thought that he had a bright future in coaching, and I told him that I could see him someday being the head coach at Whitewater. Jace went on to South Dakota to be a grad assistant briefly and doing some things. When we had moved on to Buffalo, I tried to bring Jace on as a graduate assistant. He decided to stay closer to home at Whitewater and do those things. So extremely, extremely proud of him. The thing that happens, and you look at the WIEC, and I think of this sometimes, is different cycles of teams in the league at different times have success. And usually it's because there's an injection of support of some way. And you look at lacrosse has made a comeback where, they had been down for a little bit. Platteville has made some resources. River Falls has done a nice job. Oshkosh has done a great job, and that league is so competitive. And though somebody might be disappointed in last year's season at Whitewater, I think I look at it a little bit differently. Is I think it's you need to look at really and appreciate some of the highest level of success for all these years and understand that it's not just a given and they'll work. And I know that Jason and now he's kind of revamped his staff a little bit, and it'll be, and Whitewater will be right back to where it was and competing at a high level.
You hit on the thing where when you took the job at Whitewater, where there was kind of some opposition with kind of, obviously Stan Sweefel is viewed as a favorite, and how like after you got the job that like your car got vandalized and Paul Plinsky's car got vandalized. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a decision was made. I always told about it. I'm not gonna. I'd rather not get it. It's been 18 plus years now. Again, that's water under the bridge as far as I'm concerned. Um, there was obviously many qualified candidates to be the head coach at Whitewater, and I was fortunate to be chosen. Um, we did the best job we could with the opportunities. Paul Plinsky had a very difficult decision on what to do at that time. He went with the one that he felt was going to be best for the future of Warhawk football and Warhawk athletics. And I would hope that just as people look back, that they felt that a good decision, whether it can be decided whether it was the right decision, that's up for debate always. I just hope people feel it was a good decision and one that people can move on from.
Okay. What have been the differences between the stops, like whether it's been Whitewater, Buffalo, and Kansas, and then kind of the constant theme is you've had guys like Andy Kotelnicki, Brian Borland, Daryl Igapalsa, Zombrowski has been on your staff. How has that kind of helped with kind of having that success that you've had, and what have been the differences along the way?
Yeah, I mean, each level's been different. You know, making the jump from Whitewater to FBS football at Buffalo was a unique challenge. The first step of larger staffs. Um, you know, we moved to a part of the country where we had never been. We went into recruiting areas we never had been before, that we had to establish relationships in the Northeast and really in parts of the country of that, you know, Whitewater, we're recruiting a 2.5, 3 hour radius. And now I'm on planes, you know, 5 flights a week to try to get to places to recruit, whether it be in the Northeast, in New Jersey, down to Florida, out to California junior colleges, and anywhere in between. So that was vastly different. And then, of course, taking a step from Buffalo to Kansas is even more so. More people, more resources, but it quickly became more magnified and a spotlight at this level based on what you do, what the expectations were. Obviously, fan bases and boosters, they're more, and there's more expectations that go with it. But as you mentioned, I feel as a head coach very blessed that been able to keep staff continuity for the most part at the nucleus very strong for a very long time. Hopefully, that's a sign that people have a chance to grow and have latitude within their jobs, that they can thrive and feel stimulated daily. You know, Brian Borland just retired. We're together 18 years. And when Andy Kotelnicki, after 11 years, moved on to Penn State, I jokingly said, you know, how can I be upset that Andy moved on to grow and take on a new challenge after 11 years? That's 3 times as long as most marriages last across the United States. So, and we're around each other a lot more than we are our spouses, unfortunately. So, you know, it was a great run. It was a great opportunity. Chris Simpson was with us at Whitewater my first year. He's been back ever since. So, we're going into 11 years. Jim Zabrowski, like you said, I mean, there's a lot of guys that we've worked together over 10 years together. And again, to have a chance for success, Daniel, you gotta be able to have alignment. And when you've been able to keep people that understand the foundation of how we want to go about it, having that alignment and continuity is very important. So you find people that have the same type of goals and understanding on whether it be through recruiting or how you're going to treat players, how you're going to do the organization. All those things give you a chance. But and you say what's been the differences? I think since 4 years ago, and it's just over 4 years ago since I took this job, every year, besides within those years, every 6 months or so, something keeps changing. The transfer portal, NIL, how we're going about that has continually evolved ever since the first day we walked into this job. And you have to be able to be flexible. You know, we have our ground principles on how we're going to run a program, but ever since we've had to be flexible on what the so-called rules of engagement to build a program have been ever since we arrived.
NIL, it's got to be one of the things that the biggest thing that you've had to adjust. Obviously, the transfer portal as well. What have you learned about those two things? How has NIL helped your athletes in your program? What are your athletes able to do with those opportunities? Obviously, you have the example of Jared Casey and Applebee's. Um, have you had to do anything with Culver's since you've been at Kansas? Since there's at least one in Lawrence.
Well, I'll start with the latter first. We've not done a lot with Culver's, you know, the good old Wisconsin company. We could sure use them to step up and in the NIL space. But you know, the thing is, you know, we could talk all day about, you know, the evolution of players being compensated and what that truly is and how we're trying to work through all that. I think it's good. I do think I think we need more parameters and guardrails on how we're really going to do it before we totally cannibalize ourselves. And really, I'm worried about the other sports and college athletics and the other levels other than FBS and Power Four football, and how everyone else is going to make it work. And the thing that happens many times is because where we're at, there is a lot of money. And there's a lot of money in contracts and things like that, but it's not endless. And sometimes there's a perception out there that there's always more, and that's a tough thing. So finding that balance is going to be very important in the upcoming months and years for college athletics. But at the same time, it's great to see our players. We have a couple players who have purchased homes. We've had some others that have purchased properties, and they've started investing in rentals and things like that. That they are starting their futures and doing wise with investments because of that. And we try to continually educate them that it's not about getting a fancy car right away and do certain things. We want them to try to catapult themselves after their playing days are done, to have a way, like I keep saying, a foundation to get on to the next phase of their life. So this is all good and justified. I just think we have to continue to work on how it's going to work in a sustainable model.
How about the opportunities with, I'll say, the video game coming out last year?
Yeah, when you look at it, it's good. It's one of those things, but again, the formulas in which those are being done and the price point for those players right now is it's not a lot in the big scheme of things, but it is an opportunity for them. The true thing of NIL is name, image, and likeness for their brand, for them to try to get the notoriety of some of the things that maybe they've said for years, where universities and others have profited off the person's name and image and their likeness. So whatever that can be, that's a step in the right direction. Again, though, across the board of all college athletics, what is truly going to be the market value and sustainable for all people? Or are we really going to be in a super league type of format where it is going to be almost truly another professional level of maybe 40 to 65 teams?
You took the Kansas job in May of 2021. What were the challenges of taking that over that late? And then how did that overtime win against Texas with the 2-point conversion that Jared Casey have? How did that help kind of set the success that you've had in motion? How cool is it to look back on that win and the end of this season, especially with Jalen Daniels going on his last season at quarterback?
Well, taking the job in May was very unique, very challenging in the fact that when we landed in town that day, they were coming off the field for their last walkthrough for the spring game the next day. So we were not going to be able to have any evaluation time or whatever. But at the same time, through the interview process and talking about it, we knew that though it's going to count and it's all going to do it, the first year was almost like a mulligan year. It's going to be an establishing thing. And looking back at that, I kind of told people is our training camp, the month of August, was really like spring football. Our September was almost like training camp. Our October was more like September, where we're just starting to play. So we started to play some decent football and had the big upset down in Austin in November and played very well, even though we came up short the other two games that followed. And that was kind of like our mid-season. So when we hit the field for our first spring with our guys, it was a night and day difference. So it was extremely challenging because as we came into town, a lot of our players were finishing finals and leaving town. So having an individual meeting with a player, establishing any type of relationship. We lost 3 defensive starters that entered the portal after it was just kind of came into being, that went to SEC schools, because we never really had a chance to visit with them, and the wheels were in motion that they were going to leave. And I think, again, some of the defections that we had made it very difficult. It kind of put us behind. There had been a lot of attrition in the January prior. So to try to come in and tell people what you're going to do, how it's going to work, and try to establish those type of things made it difficult off the jump. But I think we showed enough. We made enough changes, moving to a morning practice schedule, holding things more accountable, being consistent in what we did, what we said we were going to do, that our players started to buy in and understand what we were doing, and then it gave us the opportunity to take the steps that we did the following season.
Um, or the other thing I want to kind of, did the process for the Kansas job, was that easier with kind of, obviously I know when it got announced for the Buffalo job, you didn't kind of like how that kind of came out where social media got ahead of you. Was that easier this time around?
Yeah, I think so. I think back to your Whitewater question before, I forgot to mention the comeback win versus um, um, Wartburg was one of the ones that I don't think he asked me that. That was the one that kind of went through. That was tough. There's in today's day and age of social media, people getting opportunities to talk, um, so-called leaks through um, representatives, agents. It's not necessarily and somebody representing me. It can be somebody representing another candidate. And when it's going a different direction, they're letting the out. The thing about the Kansas job that, if anything, was um, Les Miles resigned, and then shortly thereafter, Jeff Long, the athletic director, resigned. Like 10 days later, if that. I don't even know if it was that long. So they did it right. They paused. They hired an athletic director who can then go hire his football coach that he wants to go through the process. So the process of the Kansas job was open a lot longer, but because there wasn't a lot of competition with other job openings, it allowed Kansas to vet the people that they wanted to. Of all the opportunities that I've been fortunate to maybe be involved in through time, this was by far the longest from the very first conversation to actually being offered the position. But as you said, it was kind of coming through, and it had kind of gone through some things, and we made it through a little bit of the rumor time and all that, but it worked out appropriately. I
Okay.
wasn't not as bad. The Whitewater thing was tough because what happened was the athletic director Danny White at the time, he had let go the previous coach in October. So here it is at the end of the regular season in FBS football, and he's trying to make a statement and understand that he's making a splash for his athletic department. But the tough thing was, of course, we were still playing at Whitewater. Now there was never any hesitation from him that I would be allowed to finish the year coaching, and I would not have taken the job if he wanted me to resign immediately. And because of that. But the unfortunate thing is, and both of these are the cases, that I never got a chance to get in front of the team at Whitewater before the announcement, and then I had to walk back into the room and do some things. And then shortly after that meeting, we practiced, and then the coaches that were coming along with had to tell the players that they were leaving as well, and that was a double shock for them. Whereas when we took the Kansas job, I was able to at least do a Zoom call with the current players in Buffalo and tell them of the situation and what was happening.
Okay. Kansas is mostly a basketball school, but does that ever reflect on do you ever reflect on your success at Whitewater? Just it's the other way kind of around, and does it feel like the trifecta happened that long ago? And then how important is kind of the relationship between a head basketball coach and a football coach at any level of college athletics?
Well, obviously this university has a great basketball tradition for many years and decades, and it's been exciting to be able to go to those games, able to go to the Final Four when they won the national championship, to kind of watch that. And again, I say this multiple times: is Kansas basketball is not on our schedule. They are not an opponent of Kansas football, and one of the things you can look at is that we're not in competition for each other. people think that you have to be a or school, football or basketball. I think we can be an and school. I think the University of Wisconsin is a great example of a place that has had success in both sports and has been able to find a way. Is it, same thing at Whitewater. What we found out is that, successful teams created a culture within that athletic department that everybody saw the opportunity, and why not us? So, why can't we be good at Whitewater and win a national championship in basketball and football and baseball, and continue to do those things in NCAA sports? So I think it's healthy. It's the thing that has to be just like here is, I feel I have an excellent relationship with Coach Self. He's very helpful to our program. He wants our program to be successful because he understands the revenues and understanding of financing an athletic department, that we need to be successful in football in order to continue to make things happen. He's been very helpful in our recruiting when asked upon, all those things. And again, alignment is important. Many of your boosters, there are a few that might be one sport or the other, but most of your boosters of people in every stop along the way want to support the athletic department. But when they look at things, obviously they're going to look at the revenue producers as a way is when they get asked to make their donations. And if there's misalignment between the sports in any way, that turns people off. And it doesn't make them, if a place isn't aligned internally, it causes hesitation. And I think one thing our athletic director here, Travis Goff, has done is created great alignment within the ranks.
Does it feel like it's been that long since that trifecta accomplishment at Whitewater, or what do you kind of think about that?
It's, in some ways it does. I can't believe it's been over 10 years since we left, and season wise, and I'll tell you, I can't, the first 4 years going into season 5 here at Kansas, this has been the fastest 4+ years of my coaching career. It doesn't stop. We continually go, and at this level, but it's been an enjoyable time. We love living in Lawrence. To think that we're almost approaching as much time here as we did at Buffalo is crazy. And in some ways, then our son is graduating high school here next week, and to consider when we moved from Wisconsin to Buffalo and the time that has gone by, it's been unique. But in some ways, though, it does seem like yesterday that some of those things were happening there in Whitewater.
Have you learned anything about kind of like how to balance being the dad and being the college coach, with especially that when you were at Buffalo, like your daughter was playing high school and college volleyball, now your son's getting into gonna play college football. Like, what did you learn about that?
Yeah, I think one of the things I didn't do a good job early in Whitewater was because of not a very big staff, and one of those things, and you're a head coach and you're trying to set the pace and establish the work ethic, and making what Jace and Kevin and Bob and everyone, the challenges at Whitewater to financially make it work and get your budget and your resources is the most challenging. So it's a never ending. Once you get to places like Buffalo and Kansas, it's set up differently for fundraising and opportunities to make it work. And because of some of those things, I think somewhere along the line, I don't know if it was years of confidence, whether A, delegation, and B, I think there was a point where I just said, you know what, I need to be a better dad, a better husband, and take time. And I think I've been better, really, probably the last 6 years of making sure that, you know what, I am going to take this time, and I am going to make sure I'm at these events instead of getting pulled in the other direction, thinking that I can't find time. And one of those things have been, once we went to a morning practice system, we did it at Buffalo. You see it a lot in FBS sports now, is is by doing things in the morning, you can come in early in the morning, you can get in here by 5 a.m. and do things, and it allows you to get home at times, or to slip away to watch your children and do things. And I think we've been able to create that, and probably something I've been better at here of late.
All right, I got two more things for you. How is spring ball for your team this year? You got one more year with Jalen Daniels at quarterback. You got Daniel Highshaw back at running back. You got a few receivers back. You lost some key pieces with Devin Neal, Mel Dotson, and Jacoby Bryant, just to name a few. What's the outlook on this year's team?
I'm excited about our team. We brought in, again, we talked about the transfer portal and things. It can be good, and I just had someone tell me again yesterday. I think we had the second least players in Power Four football enter the portal this year in the two cycles, and I think we still lead the nation in the least amount of players, scholarship players, entering the portal over the last 2 years. So as we go through it, but at the same time, we had 39 seniors this last year. We brought in 23 transfers that semester, which is a lot. And we have some early enrollees, signees. We had over 1/3 of the football team being new people in the spring. That said, it went better than I expected as far as understanding, learning schemes, but more importantly, learning our way of doing things, jumping into the culture. I thought we'd have a few more bumps of getting people acclimated to what we're doing. So I'm excited. You mentioned Jalen Daniels, and to have Jalen back is key. I think a healthy Daniel Highshaw will be able to show people that he's a pretty dynamic football player. I like the new receivers we've been able to bring in. I think we've been able to increase some speed and some things there. Same thing in the back end. On the secondary, you mentioned the two players who are now in NFL camps. We thought we had two really young, talented corners last year that were true freshmen, and Jalen Todd and Austin Alexander. I'm excited to see them kind of their impact on our team, and then we brought in a couple transfer corners to also compete with them. So it's going to be, the new world of college athletics. There's no better place to look than really Arizona State or Indiana in the college football playoff, where those teams were predicted and where they ended up, and really the injection of transfers. And if you can get people playing well and playing together, you have a chance to be highly competitive. And this conference is very competitive across the board.
Are you ever going to schedule Wisconsin in the non-con yet, or?
That really hasn't come up. We're pretty far booked out. No one's reached out from their end there. I had scheduled the Wisconsin Buffalo game, a few years back there. Unfortunately, wasn't there for it. Also, had scheduled Buffalo, Nebraska, and I wasn't there for that one either. So I don't know. So sometimes you get in this, and how far out you go, you just don't know if those games get played, and realignment, a lot of those things would happen. But another topic that's going to become a bigger player here in the years to come is, the SEC plays 8 conference games, where most other of us are playing 9. So if we reduce to an eight game conference schedule, that would open some opportunities, and you never say never for a matchup.
Okay, so last question. I know Kevin had his opinion on this. I had my opinion on this. If you had to pick a signature play or a signature group of plays that could be like men's basketball, Whitewater has the Cordell Young coast to coast game winner. Women's basketball has the Mary Merck 2 buzzer beater game. What would be in that conversation of most signature, the biggest signature play in Warhawk football history? Because I say Brady Grayvolt's pick 6 in the 2013 Stag Bowl. Bolus says something about a lengthy delay in 2009.
What was the delay? Oh, the kickoff of the Stag Bowl from the snow. Is that the one he's talking about?
No, I think it was some play involving Aaron Roosh.
Oh, you can see you got me on this one, D-Shot.
Okay.
No, I would, one for me that, we were down, I think we were down 18 to lacrosse my first year on the road. And AJ Rabel put a hit on the quarterback on the sideline, was a key turnover, and the whole momentum of the game shifted. We came back and scored. It might have been like 24 unanswered points or whatever it was and we were I think we were 1-1 or 2. We had lost to St. Cloud, and if we lose a second game that early in the season, I think it would have been a lot different type of year for us. Obviously, with expectations, a new coaching staff, that comeback win on the road at La Crosse to me was one that kind of put our program on track to kind of get us where we're going. I'd probably also have to go to a couple of the Mary Hard Baylor games, the back and forth of what happened there. There were probably some pretty influential plays of our program.
Okay. I was going to add the Mike Sherman offensive line touchdown. And then Drew Patterson had a touchdown that when Bolus was coaching, where he was trapped on the left side near the Oshkosh sideline, and miraculously got some blocking to score a game-winning touchdown. So those would be two other ones I'd throw in there.
Those are pretty good. The good thing is that there's a lot of plays to put up for consideration.
Yep, that too. Coach, thanks for joining me. Thanks for good to see you last week, and Rock Chalk Jayhawks.
All right. Appreciate it, D-Shot. Thanks for your time, and I appreciate you asking, and it was good to see you as well. Have a great summer.
All right. You too.
All right. Thanks, Daniel.
Yep.
Holler if you need anything else.
Yep. Okay.
We'll see ya.
Yep.